Week 12 dropped a little more of the alphabet on us. Let's take a look. How about those kickers? One final point, follow up from last week. The point was made that while we've only seen about a 3-point average increase in kickers over this year from last with our scoring changes, that the ceiling is much higher, that they can boom much better given the new scoring rules. I agree. I went back and I looked. We had never seen a kicker score 30 points. I don't think we'd ever score. As far back as I looked, we had never seen a kicker score 30 points, but we've seen Brandon Aubrey do 33 this year. If we go back and look at 2024, it was rare to see a 20-point game. There were a few scattered through the season, but very infrequent. This year, the top 10 kickers up to this point, other than Dicker, have all scored at least 20, twice have scored 20 points. And some have done it 4 or even 5 times. So, point made. While at the lower end, you may give up a point, a half a point to some of those shorter kicks, and if that's all they do in extra points, you may end up with a little less than last year. But if they're kicking from 40 and 50, well, it makes choosing kickers quite a bit more important. Maybe we'll start seeing kickers go in the third round next year. We'll see how that all works out. Let's take a look at our scores from this past week. We start off with Kamish and Hoffman. Thank you for the gift. A much-needed win for your Kamish. Didn't break 150, but that 141 was still third best on the week, surprisingly. But, if you look at what happened, both managed their roster well. Hoffman did just about all he could, except for the fact that he had too many guys on bye, too many guys out, and so there just wasn't enough for him to choose from. So, you leave Kamish one win away from making the playoffs himself. We'll see if Hoffman has enough to play spoiler later on through the season, last 2 weeks of the season anyway. Our next game, Champ versus Poncho. Oof. Got real close to not breaking 100 last week, and unfortunately, that's what happened this week. Poncho didn't top 100 for the first time for him this season, and he is now officially eliminated from the playoffs. We'll see as we get to our standings. But our champ is back to his winning ways, back to his scoring ways, posts a high score on the week. You see that he could have broken 200. Another opportunity for him to break 200. Man, his two starting wide receivers combined for 75 points just about, and he left 33 on the bench with another wide receiver. Whew. Stays one game ahead of Joe in the West, looking for that number 1 seed in the playoffs. Our next game, Whiskey Business, Seth Mike versus Ian. It was the Miley Bowl Part 2, and unfortunately, just like last time, Seth gets the better of the Miley Bros. I understand that there was some IR mismanagement with that. I mean, it was 8 points. Not a guarantee putting a kicker in, but obviously you want all of your roster filled. However, when you look at the roster management overall, well, there's a lot to be desired there, unfortunately. Ian puts Daniel Jones in instead of Lamar Jackson, puts DJ Moore anywhere in the lineup that he would have fit. It would have given him the win and a reasonable shot at the division. Unfortunately, he's on the outside looking in, hoping against hope to make the playoffs. And Seth Mike gets, again, benefits from a low score, which eventually that has to stop, right? I don't know. We'll see. Our next score, Pet Detectives, Joe versus Alex Billy. The Cousin Bowl? Nah, I don't like that. That's not great. But Joe gets his third in a row, posts the second highest score on the week. Stays one game behind Champ as he's trailing in the West, trying to he's in the playoffs, stamps his ticket, but still trying to get that first round bye. I'm sure he's looking for that. squeezed, as you see, just about all. Alex Billy squeezed just about all he could out of his roster. It wouldn't have been enough no matter what he did. 100% still wouldn't have given him the win. So he drops to even on the season. Still sitting at the number 6 spot. Still looking pretty good for the playoffs, but he's teetering, we'll say. So we'll see how what he's able to do in the next 2 weeks, last 2 weeks of the season. Our final game, we got Beg Your Parsons and Shankopotamus, Don Chris and Keith. Closest game of the week. Both, as you see here, left a lot of points on the bench. It could have gone, it really could have been a totally different game. Don Chris could have pulled off that win if he had put Darnold in as QB, but now his path to the playoffs is nearly impossible. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. He has a shot, but with that win, it is a nearly impossible shot. Keith, on the other hand, he's no longer sneaking up on anybody. We see him coming now. He sits at the number 5 seed with just 2 games to go. So see if he can continue his winning ways right on into the playoffs. As we look at our standings now, this gets a little bit more interesting. As I said, Joe punches his ticket. He's in the playoffs, right? John is officially eliminated. Seth gets the division, and which then gives him a spot in the playoffs as well. So here we go. One more win, and last year's champ, your reigning champ, locks in the number 1 seed because he'll win any tiebreak with Joe based strictly on points. Kamish gets in with a win, or one more loss from Ian. Alex Billy gets in with a win and a loss from Ian. Keith gets in by beating Ian this week. And in fact, if Keith wins, so in effect beating Ian, he actually would drag your commish in regardless of what happens this week, which is good because your commish is playing Joe, and that does not look to be a favorable matchup at all. Now, for those keeping track, Don Chris has that 3% chance, right? So he gets in. If he wins his next 2, if Ian loses his next 2, or at least one of the next 2, and Don Chris scores a combined 25 more points than him over the next 2. That sounds relatively reasonable, right? However, that puts him going up against Alex Billy. Alex Billy also has to lose his last 2, and Don Chris has to score at least 158 more combined points than Alex Billy over the next 2 weeks. So you're looking at about 80 points better than him each of the next 2 games to get into the playoffs. That starts to make that 3% chance look a little optimistic. Unlikely to make the playoffs. So really just comes down to whether or not Ian can sneak his way in, and then we'll see what the final 6 look like. Now, as we look at our stats, no big surprise as we look at the 1 to 10. As we look at our points scored, well, your reigning champ is about 3 points, a little over 3 points away from 2,000 points on the season to become the 7th team to hit that mark, and he needs 175 points total over the next 2 weeks to break the single season scoring record held by the highest scoring team who never made the playoffs, the 2022 version of Poncho's team. So we'll see. Very likely that he is going to break 175, score more than 175 over the next 2 weeks, and likely looking to be our single season record holder for most points scored. There we go. On the flip side, again, nothing's changed here. We see Seth Mike still taking advantage of people not scoring against him, which I know he's doing nothing for. It's just happening, and eventually that's going to stop, but maybe it doesn't happen until next season. We'll see what happens if that gets him through the rest of this season and how the playoffs shape up for him. Now we look at our pop. Yippee, Joe grabs the number 1 spot. Hoffman gets out of the 70s. No big deal there. Our power rankings. Not a lot changes on Thursdays anymore as we get closer and closer to the end of the season, but Kamish and Keith each move up a spot. Alex Billy drops 2, puts him in a must-win or must-lose Ian situation to get into the playoffs, and that's where we find ourselves now. As we look ahead to Week 13, single most important game, Keith versus Ian. If Keith wins, just about locks up the playoff picture. We'll know what the 1 through 6, at least the teams who are in, maybe shuffle between 4, 5, and 6, but that will pretty much lock it down. If Ian wins, well, week 14 gets very interesting. For now, enjoy week 13.